Liber Aleph. Just wanted to talk about maybe the first chapter of Liber Aleph or some other stuff. So this says Liber Aleph Vel CXI, which is 111. Aleph spelled in full is 111. 111. And Crowley talks about in one of his books, 777. It's in a text called Gematria. That 111 is basically a reference to Samadhi, to unity, the destruction of the self, all these ideas. And this version very nicely collects some quotes about this. It's the Book of Wisdom or Folly in the form of an epistle from 666 to his son 777. So these are some quotes from Crowley about Liber Aleph. It says Liber Aleph 111, Book of Wisdom or Folly, an extended and elaborate commentary on the Book of the Law, in the form of a letter from the Master Therian to his magical son. The book contains some of the deepest secrets of initiation with a clear solution of many cosmic and ethical problems. So people don't realize this, but Aleph was considered by Crowley to be essentially a comment on the Book of the Law. He certainly talks about a lot of concepts that are related to the Book of the Law here. It's just that they are kind of hidden behind some really dense language. Liber Aleph, the Book of Wisdom or Folly, was intended to express the heart of my doctrine in the most deep and delicate dimensions. It's the most tense and intense book that I've ever composed. The thought is so concentrated, and if I may use the word nervous, that both to write then and to read now involves an almost intolerable strain. I remember how I used to sit at my desk night after night. It's the bitterest winter that had been known in New York for many years, but even if the central heating had been the flames of hell itself, I doubt whether I should have been warm. Night after night I sat all through, rigid as a corpse and icier, the whole of my life concentrated in two spots, the small section of my brain which was occupied in the work, and my right wrist and fingers. I remember with absolute clearness that my consciousness appeared to start to form a perfectly dead forearm. The book is written in prose, yet there's a formal circumscription more imminent than anything which would have been possible in poetry. I limited myself by making a point of dealing thoroughly with a given subject in a single page. Of course, he didn't actually do this. He has multiple sections on certain topics. It was an acute agony similar to that of asana to write, and the effort removed me so far from normal human consciousness that there was something indiscibly ghastly about unnaturalness when I got into bed in full daylight in the hope of acquiring a particle of warmth from the complacent camel, which was a woman. He called the camel. So he had Liber Aleph as a commentary on the Book of the Law. It was, in a way, a letter to his magical son, who was Frater Akkad. We have the prologue. The Apologia doesn't really mean prologue. It's more of like a defense, an explanation of why you're writing something. There, Muhindo, 93, watching from Uganda. Nice. Hope everything is well with you over there. If you guys ever have any questions or whatever, feel free to type in the chat. Might get to them at some point. Right now we're going through Liber Aleph, one of Crowley's commentaries on the Book of the Law, basically. Something here that's interesting for the nerds is this first chapter, Apologia, is in like 99% of online versions of the text is missing like 2 paragraphs in the middle. This version has those paragraphs, but I just noticed that one of my favorite lines from this is actually missing from the online versions, and I had to double check it even existed. I looked in the physical book, and I found this version that has it. I'll tell you when I get there, but you got to be careful with those online editions, you know? There's a ton of typos, there's things that are missing, things that are typed wrong. So part of this is like this kind of prophecy from the book of the law. It says, change not as much as the style of a letter, for behold, thou, O prophet, shalt not behold all these mysteries hidden therein. The child of thy bowels, he shall behold them. Expect him not from the east, nor from the west, for from no expected house cometh that child. Have the whole riddle thing, right? RPSTOVAL. What meaneth this, O prophet? Thou knowest not, nor shalt thou know ever. There cometh one to follow thee, he shall expound it. So all these lines were taken by Crowley to refer to Frater Akkad. So the one who followed him was Akkad, because Akkad means one, or unity. And he came from no expected house because he was born, so to speak, 9 months after he did an operation, a magical operation with his Scarlet Woman. So it wasn't a physical child, it was kind of a magical child. So he thought this was the fulfillment of the prophecy of the Book of the Law. Thanks for the follow. For what it's worth, if you're on YouTube right now, we're trying to get to 50 followers on Twitch, just purely for the purpose of ridiculous Aleister Crowley emojis and Thelema emojis that will unlock. So if you're interested in helping and doing your part, go on to Twitch TV/Thelemic Union. Give us a follow. It's free. So this is, I have begotten thee, O my son, and that strangely, as thou knowest, upon the Scarlet Woman called Hilarion, as it was mysteriously foretold unto me in the Book of the Law. So that first sentence there is basically what I was just talking about with the Book of the Law. It's the prophecy that he's writing to Frater Akkad. He begot him upon the Scarlet Woman Hilarion. 9 months later, he became born as a master of a temple, I guess. A babe. Nemo. Now therefore that thou art come to the age of understanding, do thou give ear unto my wisdom. So that's a Kabbalistic code of sorts. Understanding is Binah. Binah is tied to the grade of Magister Templi, Master of the Temple. So saying, now therefore that thou art come to the age of understanding, he's basically saying this is a book for you now that you've come to the level of Master of the Temple. Do thou give ear unto my wisdom. Right? Wisdom is Chokmah, and he's Tomegatherion, the Magus, who is in Chokmah. So he's kind of like Chokmah instructing Binah, the Magus instructing the Magister. For that therein lieth a simple and direct way for every man that he may attain unto the end. 93 Mitchell, appreciate the follow on Twitch. So it says, firstly then, I would have thee to know that spiritual experience and perfection have no necessary connection with advancement in our holy order. So this is a reference to AA specifically. And the idea is this is actually in contradiction to what a lot of people talk about these days. They didn't really care if you had certain spiritual experience. They cared if you did the work. That's the idea, at least. So, there's certain tasks for neophyte, zealoter, etc. And if you complete those tasks, your superior confirms you've completed them, and you advance because you've done the work. Spiritual experience is supposed to accompany that, but there's no real test for spiritual experience. In spiritual perfection. So Crowley tried to have this kind of orthopraxic order, at least at first, that's what it was, where you focused on the work, focused on the practices, and you were able to teach others because you've done them, you've done the work. Each person gets their own results. Right. So it says, but for each man is a path, here's a constant, and there is a variable. There's constant and there's a variable. Seek ever, therefore, in thy work of the promulgation of the law to discover in each man his own true nature. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of typos in this version as well. There's like letters missing, but there's a constant and there's a variable. And then he says, seek ever in thy work of the promulgation of the law to discover in each man his own true nature. Perhaps that's the constant, that each of us promulgates the law in some way, Ultimately, it's about the law of Thelema, about each person discovering their own true nature. It's just interesting the phrases he uses here, true nature. He's not saying true will, but it's basically the same idea. It's equating true will with your true nature. For in each man, his inmost light is the core of his star. That is Hadith. And his work is the identification of himself with that light. Right, so that's like the Cobs is in the Ku, not the Ku in the Cobs. Worship then the Cobs, and behold my light shed over you. The idea being that every man and every woman is a star, a point of view, a god of sorts, one expression of the infinite in actuality. The core of that star is Hadith, which is the kind of impersonal self, the impersonal perceiver. The innermost light, right, of the Cobs, of the star. And it says his work is the identification of himself with that light. So ultimately, our work is to identify with Hadith. It's not every man who's called to the sublime task of the AA, wherein he must master thoroughly every detail of the great work, so that he may in due season accomplish it not only for himself, but all who are bound unto him. So elsewhere he talks about the infinite will being the same for everyone, which is essentially this: the great work, the identification of yourself with Hadith, is the same for everyone. It's everyone's great work in a way, to discover the infinite will, as he calls it in one text. And he also mentions there's a finite will. The expression of that in the world is going to be different for each person. There are very many whom in their present incarnations this great work may be impossible. So this is something people don't get, is the law is for all, Thelema is for all. But not everyone is meant to attain the great work, actually. It talks about this in Liber Aleph as well. Let's see if there's a... It's like, he readieth for them that are ready. This is known that if one be ready, if he be endowed with certain gifts, if he be fitted by birth or wealth or intelligence or some other manifest side, this knowledge is not for all men. Few indeed are called, but of these few many are chosen. This is the nature of the work. So this is actually very consistent with this text as well, which is a holy book, Ordalusis. His approach in Aleph is the same, which is that the great work is actually for a select few, which you're fitted for based on like basically the accidents of your incarnation. If you happen to have a good environment, you have enough health, wealth, etc., to be able to devote yourself to this task. As it is written, sum cuique, which is to each his own, right? Everyone has a different work to do, a different true will. Not everyone is to fully attain the great work. I think that's partly what is meant by like there being 3 grades of man of earth, lover, and hermit. Not everyone is meant to be a hermit. Not everyone is meant to be, an ipsissimus. Now, because thou art the child of my bowels, which is a phrase from the Book of the Law, I yearn greatly towards thee, O my son. I strive strongly with my spirit, that by my wisdom I may make plain thy way before thee. Thus in many chapters I write for thee those things that may profit thee. So this is basically Curly as the teacher, giving his explanation of why he's writing this text, what it means, what it's for, what its main message is, giving his benediction, and so on.